Good morning. My name is Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting an update from Eskay Mining, which trades on the Toronto Venture Stock Exchange under the symbol ESK. And joining me today is Eskay's geologic advisor, Dr. Quinton Hennigh. Quinton, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you, Megan. Pleasure to be here.
So for those new to the story, could you introduce us to Eskay Mining and their 100% controlled property in the Golden Triangle?
I sure can. Look, it's one of the best properties, best positioned properties, and geologically prospective properties in the Golden Triangle. If you look at the Golden Triangle, which is in northern British Columbia, it is one of the best endowed metalliferous provinces on Earth. And there's a number of world-class deposits here. You know, this includes the deposits that Seabridge has, like Kerr sulfurettes and so forth. It includes Tudor's recent discovery at Treaty Creek, a massive gold discovery there. But it also includes Eskay Creek mine, which is an historic mine currently being redeveloped by Skeena Resources. It is a gold and silver-rich VMS deposit, basically a volcanogenic, massive sulfide deposit that hands down is the most prolific deposit of its type that we know of on the planet, and has a great future of it. And so we've got geology on our property very conducive for similar VMS deposits to what you see at Skeena's Eskay Creek project.
So last week, the company announced their 2023 program, where we'll see exploration work at previously identified VMS systems, but we'll also see a new focus on targets that have been identified by the company's geophysical advisor, Riaz Mirza. Could you walk us through these various targets for the upcoming season?
My pleasure. I think it's a very exciting story, and I'll take you through the very long list of targets that we're looking to pursue this year. First of all, bring people's attention to our disclaimer. This presentation is part of our deck on our website. It's available for people to read in detail. All right, so the first thing I've got to do is emphasize how important this property is. You can see here a map of the Eskay consolidated property, which is shown in light yellow. It completely surrounds the Eskay Creek mine. This is Skeena's current project that they're looking to revitalize, develop into a new mine. You can see up at the north end of the map there. So Eskay Creek, the famous gold, VMS-rich gold deposit, is entirely encircled by our property position. Immediately to the east of us, we have the Mitchell sulfurettes and Kerr deposits that belong to Seabridge. Those are in the blue. You can also see the very famous Brucejack deposit, which now belongs to Newcrest. It's down there in the green in the lower right. Tudor's Treaty Creek project, massive gold discovery, is up in the pink in the upper right-hand side. Okay, now what we are looking at is VMS potential on our ground that's similar to the Eskay Creek deposit. We have geology very similar to what you see at Eskay Creek, and we have already drilled two of these targets quite extensively, including Jeff and TV. But there's many more targets, as you can see on this map, and we're very delighted to be able to test some of these new targets this year. All right, now a little bit about the Eskay Creek deposit. This slide here, this shows you a plot of the grade of the deposit in grams per ton on the vertical axis versus the deposit's tonnage on the horizontal axis. When you plot Eskay Creek in this type of fashion, you can see it stands out head and shoulders above any other VMS deposit on Earth with respect to grade. Now, it's not a huge deposit in terms of tonnage, but because of its extremely high-grade nature, it basically delivered a very large endowment of gold. Okay, it was over 100 tons of gold, about 3.3 million ounces of gold were produced from the mine during the period in which Homestake and then Barrick mined the deposit from the mid-1990s up through the around 2010 or 11 or so. Okay, now there was also quite a bit of silver. I can't emphasize enough, this isn't just a gold-only deposit. It is a silver deposit as well. So it produced 161 million ounces of silver. Now that's quite remarkable, because if you use an 80-to-1 conversion ratio for silver to gold, that brings the endowment of this initial mine, this older high grade mine, to over 5 million ounces gold equivalent. And you can see the grades then. They're 46 grams per ton gold, 2.2 kilograms of silver per ton. Absolutely world class in every respect. These are the kind of targets that make make this exploration world exciting. All right, now let's get into our targets. We have done this geophysical review here recently. This is using primarily magnetics data, which I'll talk about in more detail. But this image here lays the kind of the stage for what the area that we're focused. All right, now you can see in the two images on the right, the one on the top and the one on the bottom, you can see the location of the Eskay Creek mine. That's in the kind of a darker yellow circle or oval. And that, again, it hosts, important emphasis, it hosts, or it produced over 5 million ounce gold equivalent, but it currently hosts over 5 million ounces remaining in the lower grade, not low grade, but lower grade mineralization that Skeena is looking to develop. So in effect, it's really a 10 million ounce gold equivalent deposit, right? And then the kind of tan colored ovals that you see outline a number of new targets that we've identified. One of them is called Maroon Cliffs. You can see that in this image, we're looking south. So we're looking somewhat obliquely to the south from an aerial shot. And you can see that Maroon Cliffs lies due east of the Eskay Creek deposit. Maroon Cliffs is basically at the north end of what we call the eastern anticline. So it puts it in a similar geologic setting where Eskay Creek is at the north end of the Eskay anticline. We are at the north end of the eastern anticline in a very similar geologic position. So basically it encompasses the same rock units, same horizons that we could expect to find in Eskay Creek-like deposit. And we also have other targets that you can see here. You can see Tarn Lake. We were very successful in tagging a new system at Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob last year. I'll talk more about that in a bit. You can see TV Jeff, where we did drill over the past 2.5 or 3 years, some very, very big VMS systems that are clearly part of a much bigger picture here. Hexagon-Mercury is a target that, through the work Riaz has done, has been revitalized. It was a target identified by the old timers way back, say 20 years ago, but now in new parts of this target area, it shows great promise, and I'll show you why here in a minute. But we're going to talk about all of these targets and how we're going to pursue them. All right, so Riaz and his team are very good at processing and manipulating using derivatives of magnetics data to identify lookalike targets. And in this case, you can see the Eskay Creek deposit down here in the lower left. It stands out because it has a very pronounced magnetic response, a high, in this case pinks, surrounded by kind of a moat of lower response. And that area is expanded up here in the upper right. So you can actually see more detail in the upper right. Eskay Creek, the deposit itself sits right on, associated with and accompanying that higher amplitude feature, that bright pink feature. And it's surrounded by this distinct moat of low signal material around it. Okay, and when they model this in 3D, when they actually put the data into the computer, had it do what we call an inversion, you can see the two images in the lower right that show the magnetics and how they look in the third dimension. So we're looking at basically a horizontal view, or cross-sectional view of the magnetics going down into the ground. And lo and behold, the deposit at Eskay Creek is 1-for-1 with these magnetic protrusions, these features that kind of poke their nose up. You can see all the drill holes there. They're very closely tied to that magnetic feature. And that's where the bulk of the Eskay Creek deposit lies, right? So this is very exciting. It basically says, hey, we've now got a tool, a magnetics tool, that shows you where to go look for similar styles of mineralization. Okay, so Riaz took this information and looked around at the response of the rest of the northern half of our property, and immediately identified Maroon Cliffs. Over here in the lower left, you can see Maroon Cliffs is on the right-hand side of that image. And we're going to zoom in there and talk about that briefly. Okay, so now we're looking at a zoomed-in image of Maroon Cliffs, same magnetics data. It's got the first vertical derivative processing, 1VD processing. And this shows you clearly that there are these very discrete magnetic highs, and they're engulfed in this much lower, the blue response that surrounds them. Now, we've done very, very little work in this area up to this point. There's only a few, older, two-year-old soil samples that were collected in this general region way back in 2021. And they do show anomalous silver. You can see some of the values here do show anomalism, but by and large, we did not cover this target. Nonetheless, we think this is potentially an important target for us. We have very little idea right now what the rocks are on the ground. We simply have this data right here that says there's something very interesting that looks very similar in nature, the same expression as the Eskay Creek deposit to the west. All right, so this is going to be a very high priority for us to get out there, do some boots on the ground work, but also be prepared to come in and drill this thing, perhaps aggressively, very soon after. Our team is going to hit this hard as soon as they land up at Eskay Creek in June. They'll spend a couple of weeks looking at this. I also plan to attend site and examine this area myself, and we hope to be drilling this by mid-year. All right, so this is one of our first and very exciting targets that we have coming up. All right, now this image here shows you a little bit further detail. I told you a minute ago about the magnetic response and how where these magnetic features come up and they actually extend to the Earth's surface. Those seem to be the good areas to go hunting. All right, over here in the left, you can see the Eskay Creek deposit. We're actually looking south now. You can see Eskay Creek with one of these magnetic protrusions. And lo and behold, there's a deposit there, 10 million ounce deposit. Well, let's go over to Maroon Cliffs. You can see at Maroon Cliffs, we have multiple magnetic protrusions that are reaching surface, very similar expression. And we think that because of this, we might have a very, very strong target here, maybe an analog to Eskay Creek. Now, one of the other data sets that we have that is lending some comfort to the idea that this might be an important target for us are BLEG samples. These are stream sediment samples we collected a couple of years ago. And you can see these on the right-hand side. So the reds and the oranges are basically, and the pinks are highly elevated gold in soil stream sediment samples that were collected. And Maroon Cliffs, the target area, is immediately kind of engulfed to the south of that kind of horseshoe shaped pattern you can see in the reds. Okay, so we do think that the response here, this stream sediment anomalism, might be related to perhaps gold shedding from this area. All right, so this is another line of evidence we feel is very important. Again, test to the high priority nature of this target. Now I'm going to jump over to the Hexagon-Mercury area. Now, this image that you see on the right-hand side is a little bit dated. I mean, this is our SkyTem data. It is not magnetics data in this case. And this shows you that we have this, like the TVGF area, we have a belt on the east side of the Eskay anticline that basically following that purple belt, where we have some significant VMS deposits. And then over on the left-hand side, you can see another purple belt that kind of mirrors that, all right? And we have deposits like Sib and Lulu, which are immediately on strike to the Eskay Creek system, which is a little bit further north and off of this image. So Eskay Creek is on the western limb of the Eskay anticline. Now, this Hexagon-Mercury area was first identified by the old-timers, and you can see the oval that's shown here. But really, this target is much bigger, and I'll show you why, because Riaz's geophysical expertise, he's highlighted what looks like a very robust target. And it actually extends and underlies that area where it says helipads constructed to provide access for field exploration in 2023. So keep your eye on that spot, because that's about where this next target lies. Let's go look at this next slide. And you'll see here we have magnetics, just like I showed you in the previous slides, over here on the left. Again, a very pronounced red feature right in the dead center of that image. And it's kind of engulfed by blues and greens around it once again. Okay, so Riaz very, very carefully modeled this 3D inversion, and he shows in profile here on the right-hand side these protuberances, these features that come all the way to surface that could be analogs to the Eskay Creek deposit. All right, now Lulu, which is it's a known deposit, is shown in the same profile. And it just so happens we have a fair bit of data. We have a fair bit of drill data that shows there is a deposit there. And guess what? There's a protuberance sticking up right there. All right, so that basically ticks that box. But if we look further, in this case, to the southeast, as you go along and you look towards the middle of the images on the right-hand side, you can see there's several more that pop up, and they reach very close to surface. It's these ones that we're the most interested in this go-around. And we do plan to drill test this area this year. It is kind of no man's land with respect to what we know about the property. We don't have good soils or rock chip data or anything like this. It's largely covered. You know, it's till and other forms of color like the scree slope and stuff. But we think that the geophysical expression here certainly warrants a hard look. So like Maroon Cliffs, we plan to tackle this year. We're going to do what boots on the ground work we can, and then come in quickly and do some drilling to test these features, see if we can't make more discovery. All right, so Hexagon-Mercury, another very high priority target for us. All right, now I'm going to talk briefly about the Scarlet-Tarn Trend. This is Scarlet-Tarn Lake, where the team did find a new discovery last year. Now, in the image on the right-hand side, Scarlet-Tarn is kind of towards the right-hand side. It actually is at the toe or the nose of the Bruce Glacier that's sticking up there. So it's right towards the end of that glacier. And on one side, you've got Scarlet Ridge. On the other side, you've got Tarn Lake. Okay, so basically, underneath the end of that glacier, that terminus of that glacier, is a newly discovered VMS system. And the crew found through drilling, they found a significant VMS system here. I think one of the better intercepts was, say, 11 or 12 meters of around 3 grams gold equivalent. So it's not insignificant. It's very much in line with the kind of drill results you see from Skeena's Eskay Creek deposit. Okay, so this is going to be another area that we follow up. Very important target for us. Mm-hmm. All right, here you can see a close-up of that area. You've got the Bruce Glacier, and again, we're towards the end of it, towards the terminus. You can see, mineralization on either side of the glacier. Some samples quite high grade. We have up to 56 grams per ton, as you can see over there on the right, at surface. Now, the crew thinks that the style of mineralization that's been found here represents a feeder zone, like a Stockberg feeder zone to a VMS system. So it's not necessarily the VMS itself, but it's definitely a stockwork that might have fed a VMS. The question is, where is the VMS in this picture? Like, where does it fit? And they're going to do more work here. Now that they know that there's a significant gold and silver bearing system here, they're going to try to evaluate this with, again, boots on the ground work early in the season, and start looking at areas around this to see if they can't figure out where this feeder actually dumped mineralization out onto the sea floor. My hunch, maybe it's off to the west a bit, okay, because the rocks tend to be dipping, at least in this area, they tend to be dipping to the west and northwest, right? But this is a very exciting auriferous and silver-bearing area. All right, here you can see samples the crew collected last year. The two samples that you see at the top there, one from the Tarn Lake side of the glacier, the other from the Scarlet Nub side of the glacier. They both show stockwork sulfide mineralization, very similar in nature on either side. The host rock is rhyolite. It happens to be the rhyolite that hosts the Eskay Creek deposit. Okay, so we know we're in the right hunting ground, and we know we have high-grade mineralization. Look at the sample on the left-hand side there, 9.2 grams per ton gold, 8 grams per ton silver. But look at the one on the right, 56.9 grams per ton gold, 154 grams per ton silver. That's starting to smell and sound like the numbers we saw at the old Eskay Creek mine. All right, so this is a feeder that looks like it's of very high interest, and we need to do follow-up work. I expect there's a chance we will drill a few holes to retest this season. Here you can see some of the holes in profile that hit mineralization. All right, so over here on the left-hand side, there's a number of images that show the zone of stratiform mineralization, but then also the alteration and magnetic susceptibility around it. Okay, so basically we're showing different lines of evidence that show there is a major VMS system starting to take shape there. All right, we have over here on the right-hand side some high-level data, surface samples, including the drill holes as well, but also around mapping, Gaussian outcrops and stuff that show there's a much more expansive system here. Okay, I think that the team is very excited about the prospect that they can expand Tarn Lake this year. Perhaps they can figure out where the sulfide mineralization is blooming out, where it's blowing out and becoming perhaps a viable deposit. Who knows? Maybe there will be high-grade mineralization here, like the old Eskay Creek mine. We've certainly seen samples that demonstrate that's possible. All right, the Tarn Lake Trend. This is, kind of taking a step back and looking at the whole picture. You can see also a magnetic response, a lot of blues surrounding this Tarn Lake, Scarlet Valley, Scarlet Ridge, and AP zone with a bunch of distinct red features embedded in that. And that's the kind of pattern that we saw out of Riaz's work that he did up at Eskay Creek. All right, now the image in the lower right shows you clearly there's a number of green magnetic features. These would be just below surface, and you can kind of get a sense there's some that are trying to reach their way up and touch surface here. So those will be potential high priority targets for us, much like Maroon Cliffs and Hexagon-Mercury. Okay, now we're going to step down and we're going to look at a few other targets. One of the areas that really jumped out in Riaz's work was an area to the south, a little bit to the southwest of TV. We've done a lot of drilling at TV. And down here in the lower left, you can see an image that shows the TV deposit is associated with one of these magnetic protuberances. But, and by the way, we're looking eastward in the lower left image. Okay, so those profile images, we're looking eastward. And you can see that there's actually more magnetic protrusions trying to reach up and touch surface nearby. We plan to go in and drill a few more holes to test around the TV deposit and make sure we aren't missing something that's much, much bigger. Okay, so we think there might be an expansion of the TV deposit to the south of that area, shown here by the data that Riaz has put together. Now, other targets that have popped out, Cumberland. Cumberland, I actually have been pushing because I think, well, this was drilled historically. There's a handful of holes here. They're very tight clusters of drill holes and just off a couple of drill pads, but they are VMS mineralization. In fact, in places very high grade. Okay, now we don't have the magnetics data for this area, but given the geology, given the historic results, I do think this is a significant target that bears follow-up work. So I'm pushing the crew to also undertake some boots on the ground exploration in this area, maybe in preparation for drilling late in the season. Okay, and then the last area I want to talk about is over here on the right-hand side. We got an area we call Virginia Lakes. Again, it shows a very pronounced magnetic feature. You can see it in the upper image as well as in the 3D model in the lower image. And it seems to have these protuberances that come close to surface in there. There's a little bit of historic rock chip sampling in this area. It shows some good, solid gold, silver numbers. Also, VMS, style of mineralization. There's no question that's what it is. But this area really hasn't seen any significant drilling. Okay, so this is one place that might also provide another target for us to follow up. Right, so we have a whole long list of targets here that we plan to tackle this year. I can't wait to get up the site. I'm going to let the crew do about 3 weeks of work before I jump in and kind of stir up things. But I want to see what they come up with, and then we're going to lay the plans for a very successful drill program this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Quinton. And before we let you go, could you briefly summarize why investors should keep an eye on Eskay during the upcoming 2023 season?
Yeah, look, I would say of all of the companies active in the Golden Triangle, this one is absolutely ripe for discovery. And we're well positioned with all these world-class deposits around us to be a prime takeover target by one of the neighboring companies. I mean, if we make discovery here, this will create a lot of value. I think we're going to see the gold silver market start to turn around mid-year. Right now, it's a tough time in the gold and silver space, but this is a good buying time. This is a good opportunity for people to buy shares at a highly discounted price. I think with the exploration program that we have, I think we'll deliver a lot of value by the end of this year. I would expect to be trading significantly higher on the back of any new discoveries we make.
All right. Thank you so much, Quinton. Appreciate having you on today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Megan.